You want to talk about electricity? I reckon so. What do you want to say about it?
Well, electricity is stuff that can shock you.
Is that something you're learning about in school?
Yeah.
What did you learn about electricity besides that it can shock you?
I mean, we didn't learn that it can shock us.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
You figured that out on your own?
Well, electricity is what makes stuff to have light.
Oh, like that light right there?
Yep.
Well, I got a story to tell about that. One time I was walking with Jordan. You remember my friend Jordan?
Yeah.
That I always tell you about? Who died in the car accident?
Mm-hmm.
We were walking down the road, and I said, you see that electric fence right there? I said, there's no electric going through that fence. He says, how did you know that? And I said, well, there's grass growing up all along the side of the fence. They'd have to trim that down. I thought that it would short the fence out. And he said, well, if there's no electricity going through there, why don't you go up and touch that fence? I said, sure, I will. So we walked across the road over to the fence.
Were you guys kids?
I was about twice your age, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Walked across the road, I touched the fence. Took my hand off of it, and I said, there you go. No electricity. He said, touch it longer. So I laid my hand on that fence, and pow! The electricity went through my body. It lifted me up. I'm not kidding you. It straightened me out like a 2x4 and lifted me up about that high off the ground. And I felt my hand come off the fence, but even after my hand come off the fence, I felt I felt it kind of like the after effect of the electricity right up my body, all the way from my soles of my feet all the way up my body to the top of my head, and it raised my hair up. And that's a true story. That fence had an alternating pulse going through it. Bzz, bzz, bzz. And the first time I had touched it miraculously, touched it right between those pulses. So when he said touch it for longer, I must have touched it again right between those pulses, but then the pulse come through. Bzz, and it hit me, and when you get hit by electricity, you're right. When you get hit by electricity, it straightens your muscles like a board. So that's a true story. You got to be very careful around electricity. What else do you know about it?
That electricity makes the light come up. And the biggest light ever, the biggest light ever is the sun.
That's right. That's the closest to us. And do you want to tell these folks about when we camped out in the backyard and I told you about the astronauts up in the International Space Station? I told you that the astronauts on the Apollo missions were flying back, and they were in the spaceship, and then one of the astronauts noticed that there was a piece of poop floating through the through the air, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't get over that things just float around up there. But sure enough, they sitting there and, oh my gosh, he says, what is that? It turned out to be a turd. And the astronaut didn't want any responsibility for it. He says, that's not mine. The other guy said, that's not mine either. I know what mine looked like. And then they were sitting there a little bit while longer, and another turd come floating through. I just did tell the story.
All of it.
Well, first of all, she didn't know about the International Space Station. She didn't know that you're more or less weightless in space, and so the whole idea was just phenomenal to her. And actually, while I was sitting there telling you about the International Space Station, it come by, didn't it? We saw it come across the sky just right while I was telling her about it. And so the turd story was just cherry on top of stuff.
Was it 3 astronauts? Because you just...
Yes, there were 3 astronauts. That's true, yeah. And every one of them were in there denying it. It ain't mine, no. Mine went into the bag because they had to go into a bag. And then they tie that bag shut and they put it in a container. Because everything's floating. You can't just go in a hole. Because if you go in the hole, it'll just float right out. So they So they have to go in bags. They have to actually go in bags. And apparently somebody didn't quite aim very well into the bag.
Another astronaut did that.
That's true. And you can get online, and that's what I did for her that night. You can get online, and I can't find a video or audio of it or anything, but you can actually download the transcript of that conversation between those astronauts, and it's historical record. But that truly happened. Well, I've kept you here for a long time, haven't I?
Mm-hmm.
You wanting to get back to Mario? Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
This is your vacation after all. All right. Well, why don't you do that? Thank you so much for joining us today. You want to say goodbye to everybody?
Bye, everyone. I'm leaving and playing my Nintendo.
Okay, enjoy. Thank you. So,
Love y'all.
as I mentioned before, one thing I've been doing here lately with the orange slices is that I take each episode of the Last Symptom podcast, so I got a lot of material to get through, to turn these into orange slices. But what I was thinking was that because people don't always have entire hours to sit and dedicate to watching a video, I thought that it would be nice to extract interesting and valuable points from each show, turn those into an orange slice, and then put them up as like a 5-minute video or as a 10-minute video, and give more people an opportunity to discover that information and the last symptom. So that's what I'm doing here now. Be sure to like each video. That helps it get recommended to other viewers. And also be sure to forward the link to things that you find interesting to people who you think that could benefit from them. Orange Slices are brief highlights from the Last Symptom podcast. Subscribe to full audio episodes of the show on any major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Pandora, iTunes, Amazon Music, and more. While I've got you chewing on that, like this video, pretty please. Might as well press subscribe while you're at it. I bet you a nickel you know somebody who's overdue for hearing some of these things, so go on, forward this video to them.